In 1981, Ford introduced a name that sounded simple, yet carried enormous ambition: Ford Escort. They called it a world car, a global car that could conquer every market, from the damp streets of Europe to the long-stretching highways of America. It wasn't just a fuel-efficient compact model, but a statement that Detroit was ready to step into a new era after the oil shocks of the 1970s. And what's remarkable is that it succeeded almost immediately. Throughout the 1980s, the Escort became one of the top-selling cars in the United States, weaving its way into every neighborhood, every factory parking lot, every driveway in front of a white-painted wooden porch. However, after all the sales and all the upgrades, Ford discontinued it to make room for a new name. Today, we're going to turn back the pages and revisit that short-lived yet turbulent journey. Few people remember that as early as 1955, in the UK, Escort was Ford's label for lower-end variants based on the Anglia and Squire, cars for those who needed something simple, cheap, easy to fix, and enough to carry the whole family along the narrow, damp roads of post-war Britain. But it wasn't until 1968 that the Escort truly stepped into the spotlight as a proper model line. Ford of Europe launched the first-generation Escort to replace the Anglia, and almost immediately it became a phenomenon. Compact, practical, reasonably priced, and especially in tune with mainstream tastes in Western Europe. Up front, it stood out with a herringbone-style grille and a pair of classic round headlights. Out back were round tail lights set deep into the body, and detail that later led many Americans to jokingly call it the dog-bone Escort. The beauty of the Escort Gen 1 was in being old school in all the right places: a front-mounted engine, rear-wheel drive, and a live rear axle, a simple layout that was easy to maintain and tough enough to take abuse. Inside, there was a body-colored painted metal dashboard, clear analog gauges, and thin but sturdy seats. No fuss, no frills, just a very real mechanical feel, something you could hear and sense through the steering wheel, through the tire noise, through the slight vibration in the floor. It was that very foundation that turned the Escort into a rally legend. On roads that were slick, dusty, and littered with gravel, a car that was light, well-balanced, and easy to control could sometimes be more frightening than machines with more power. The Escort became a toy for drivers who loved the feeling of kicking the tail out, who loved that moment when the car slid sideways and then pulled itself back onto the right line. Ford sold about 2 million units with just the first generation, an emblematic milestone, the first Ford built outside the United States to reach that number. By 1975, the European Escort moved into its second generation. What's interesting is that Ford didn't rush to reinvent it just to be different. They kept the RWD spirit and the familiar layout, only refining it to feel more up-to-date. The Escort Gen 2 continued to sell strongly, as if Europe at the time had no desire to abandon the simple formula that had made it a success. In 1981, when Ford officially unveiled the Ford Escort in the US market, behind it was a decidedly cold-sounding internal codename: Project Erica. The goal of this project was extremely ambitious: to replace both the aging Pinto and the imported Fiesta models with an entirely new platform, modern, fuel-efficient, and strong enough to compete with the wave of Japanese cars pouring into the West Coast. The heart of the early US market Escort was the compound valve hemispherical engine. The name may sound like a marketing gimmick, but underneath it really was a hemispherical Hemi-style design, with a single overhead camshaft and domed pistons intended to create better mixture swirl inside the combustion chamber. The objective was clear: optimize fuel consumption while still keeping enough usable torque for American families who were used to the feel of heavier, more planted cars. The standard 1.6-liter made about 65 horsepower, a modest figure, but perfectly in step with the post-oil crisis era. Ford called the Escort a world car, a global car, assembled in many places, using shared components to reduce costs and unify brand identity. But the truth behind it was very different. The American and European design teams worked almost completely separately. Even though the overall shape and suspension had similarities, the two versions did not share any body panels. The only things they truly shared were the CVH engine and the ATX automatic transmission. The world car turned out to be two different cars wearing the same name. The Escort that year switched to front-wheel drive, used independent front suspension and a rear torsion beam, and was about 150 pounds lighter than the model it replaced. The LGL, GLX, and SS trims offered multiple equipment levels, from practical to a light sporty flavor. By 1982, the standard model's output edged up to about 69 horsepower, and more importantly, the HO, high output version appeared, making about 80 horsepower. Those numbers sound small today, but at the time, they were enough to turn a car bought for efficiency into a car that was fun to drive too. By 1983, Ford did what car buyers were beginning to see as a sign of the future. The HO received multi-port fuel injection, pushing output to about 88 horsepower, with cleaner throttle response and easier cold starts. Things that were very practical for everyday users. In 1984, Ford made its boldest pivot. They released a turbo version at about 120 horsepower, like a challenge thrown at anyone who still thought compact meant boring. At the same time, an opposite choice appeared. A Mazda diesel version with only about 52 horsepower, slow-paced, but aimed straight at buyers who put absolute priority on miles per gallon and diesel-style durability. On the variant side, the SS package was once Ford's little shot of sporty seasoning, but it was later discontinued because it ran head-on into a playing field where GM held the advantage. In its place, Ford built up the GT name, stronger sounding, easier to sell, and fitting for Escorts dressed up with slightly more aerodynamic trim, slightly nicer wheels, and a slightly more hot hatch feel. Then there was the Ford EXP in 1982, a two-door coupe variant developed from the Escort platform, aimed straight at younger buyers looking for something compact but different. Its fastback shape, steeply raked rear glass, and stubby tail gave it a modern feel, in line with the aerodynamic philosophy that was in vogue at the time. Compared with the Escort hatchback, the EXP looked more fashionable and less practical. Inside, the cabin was clearly separated into two seats. The gauge cluster was boxy, and many versions had a digital instrument panel, a very futuristic detail in the early 1980s. However, because of added body reinforcement and extra amenities, the EXP was about 200 pounds heavier than the Escort, so performance wasn't truly impressive. Even so, Ford still marketed it as a symbol of fuel-efficient style. In addition, the Turbo GT version didn't create a wave. Sales were sluggish, and it was dropped in 1985. And by mid-1985, Ford finally carried out a significant facelift for the Ford Escort. The front end was redesigned to look sharper, with fewer of the hard, blocky edges of the 1981 model. More importantly, the 1.6-liter engine was gradually replaced by the 1.9-liter CVH, delivering better low-end torque, something American families could truly feel every time they pulled away from a red light or climbed grades on the interstate. In 1986, Ford released the Pony version, the cheapest configuration, nearly stripped of every convenience feature to keep the price as low as possible. This was a very practical strategy to hold on to fleet customers, students, and first-time buyers weighing American cars against Japanese ones. But the real turning point came in 1991, when a new generation Escort was born on the Mazda 323 platform and later shared much of its DNA with the Mazda protégé. This was no longer just a compact that was good enough. This was the moment Ford admitted that to compete seriously, they needed Mazda's chassis tuning and driving feel, a car maker already known for balance and mechanical precision. The GT and LXE versions were equipped with a Mazda 1.8-liter DOHC engine, making about 127 horsepower, paired with four-wheel disc brakes. For the first time, the Escort wasn't just a car bought for the price, but a car that could make a driver smile when carving through a corner. A 0 to 60 miles per hour time of about 8.3 seconds put it on par with many sporty compacts of the early 1990s. Mazda's intervention changed how the Escort was perceived. The steering was more precise, the body was more stable at highway speeds of 70 miles per hour, and the car as a whole delivered a cohesive feel that earlier generations lacked. As the 1990s drew to a close, the Escort began to take on a very different look, as if Ford was trying to freshen it up, to stay current, but at the same time unintentionally pushing it away from its original character. In 1997, the next generation arrived with a rounded jelly bean design that brought to mind the Taurus and Contour. Fewer sharp edges, less exposed mechanical honesty, every line softened to suit popular taste. The lineup was also narrowed, mostly down to sedan and wagon, as a clear sign that the Escort was now positioned more toward family duty and fleet use than toward passionate drivers. Under the hood was a 2.0-liter CVH split-port engine at about 110 horsepower, enough for the daily commute, but no longer delivering that surprisingly nimble feeling of the earlier Mazda DOHC versions. Then, in 1998, Ford rolled out one last gamble, the ZX2, a coupe meant to hold on to younger customers and keep a little fire in the Escort name. The two-door body with a sloping roofline, long side glass, and a high tail gave it a far more energetic look than the sedans of the same era. This was the youngest-looking Escort since the EXP days. Under the hood was a 2.0-liter Zetec DOHC engine, producing about 130 horsepower, paired with a 5-speed manual for a solid, confident shift feel. The engine revved quickly, the note was tight and bright, and it was enough to push this small coupe to 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 8 seconds. The suspension was tuned stiffer, and the steering had clearer feedback compared with the Escort sedan. Ford even created higher performance versions, like the ZX2S/R, to take on the Civic Si head-on, trying to prove that the Escort could still be a car worth driving, not just a way to get around. In 2000, the Ford Focus debuted and immediately became the new direction. More modern, more globalized, with a more thoroughly engineered chassis and driving feel. By this point, the Escort was gradually pushed into a fleet and rental role, showing up more often in airport rental lots than in the garages of private buyers. By 2002, the Escort sedan officially ended in the United States, closing out a long journey in which it had once been a lifeline after the oil crisis, and then ultimately became the name that got replaced when Ford wanted to move into a new era. The Escort succeeded not because it was the best compact, but because it showed up right when America was changing gears. In the early 1980s, so many families were used to land yachts as long as a boat, big engines, heavy bodies, and a sense of safety that came from sheer mass. But after the fuel shocks, they needed something smaller, more efficient, without making them feel like they were stepping into a foreign world. The Escort became the perfect transition car. Compact in size, easy to park, not much of a gas drinker, yet still retaining that planted feel and the American-style driving habits. It didn't deliver handling as sharp as the imported Corolla or Civic of that era, and plenty of people complained about steering feedback, about a shifter that felt a bit loose, about the way the chassis could sometimes feel strange when cornering hard. Then when Ford let Mazda put its hands on the Escort, the story changed tone. The generations based on Mazda platforms made the car genuinely competitive in technical terms: a stronger DOHC engine, four-wheel disc brakes on higher trims, and most importantly, a driving feel that became more cohesive. At that point, the Escort was no longer just a car bought for price and miles per gallon. It began to carry the identity of a well-tuned compact, enough for the driver to feel the road, to feel the weight transferring. But then, in the final stretch of the story, what irritates people isn't the engine or the jelly bean design. It's the name. Escort had been a global brand, lasting through many generations, through rally, through the post-oil crisis era, through the battle with Japanese cars, and it had become a memory for millions of people. So why did Ford throw that name away as if it were just a product code? The answer lies in the code language of meetings: corporate naming convention. A corporate naming rule where everything has to be aligned, follow alphabetical logic, and fit neatly into a spreadsheet. The letter E was reserved for crossovers and SUVs: Escape, Edge, Explorer, Expedition. The letter F was for passenger cars: Fiesta, Focus, Fusion, 500. It sounds tidy, it sounds logical on a PowerPoint slide, but it is also the kind of thing that can kill a legacy without firing a shot. And the Escort, with all of its history, was pushed aside to make room for the Focus. A new name, a new chapter, a new era that Ford wanted people to remember. And yes, I would like to have a conversation with whatever MBA came up with that idea. Not to yell for the sake of it, but to ask one very simple question. When you set alphabetical rules for a product lineup, did you ever think about what those names were carrying with them? Because for many Americans, the Escort wasn't just a small car, it was a chapter of life. And chapters like that deserve to be closed with respect, not with a cold standardization decision. If you've ever had a Ford Escort in your memories, or ever ridden shotgun, listening to that steady, four-cylinder hum on the highway, leave a comment and tell me, which generation was it, what color was it, and what's your biggest memory with it? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you can get my newest videos as soon as they drop. See you next time.